Only those who were there truly know. Only those who felt the engine vibrating beneath their feet before the first advance understand what those moments meant. It wasn't just fear of the enemy, it was the awareness that every decision could be the last. Many American soldiers carried that weight for the rest of their lives. For them, the war didn't begin in history books, but inside a sealed, overheated tank, moving slowly across terrain that seemed endless. The Sherman tank was everywhere. In Europe, in North Africa, and later in the Pacific. For most Americans back home, it symbolized strength, progress, and confidence. It was visible proof that the United States was present and pushing forward. But for those inside it, the Sherman meant something more complex. It was protection, yes, but protection with clear limits, and everyone inside understood that. The M4 Sherman was never designed to be perfect. It was designed to arrive quickly, function reliably, and be produced in massive numbers. That was the American logic. While other nations placed all their bets on a few heavily armored machines, the United States bet on consistency and logistics. That choice would help shape the outcome of the war. But it also created a harsh reality for those who depended on that tank on the battlefield. Inside the Sherman, space was tight, heat was constant, and the noise never stopped. The smell of fuel lingered at all times. Every crewman knew his role by memory because there was no room for mistakes. If you value stories told by those who lived through this firsthand, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps keep the memory of these men alive. What they faced doesn't show up in cold statistics. And then there was the flaw. Not a simple flaw, not something that could be fixed with a better part. The Sherman's armor was thinner than that of German tanks like the Tiger and the Panther. Its tall profile made it visible from a distance. Veterans knew this before they ever entered combat, and this is where the story begins to weigh heavier. When a Sherman faced a Tiger head-on, everyone inside understood the risk. Often, the mission wasn't to win the duel, but to buy time. Time to maneuver, to flank, to call for support. That awareness shaped how American crews fought. They didn't rely solely on the steel around them. They relied on each other, on coordination, and on strategy. That didn't mean a lack of courage. It meant combat maturity. The Sherman's flaw didn't turn its crews into victims. It made them more alert, more disciplined, and in many cases more unified. Veterans often say they survived not because the tank was superior, but because they learned quickly how to fight with what they had. There is a vast difference between war seen from afar and war lived up close. While propaganda showed progress and victory, the interior of the Sherman revealed constant tension. Every crossroads, every hill, every village could hide an unseen threat. And still, these men moved forward, not because they ignored the risks, but because they believed in the mission and in the country they represented. The patriotism there wasn't loud. It was quiet. It lived in following orders, in watching over the man beside you, in trusting that across the ocean an entire nation was working to support you. The Sherman was imperfect, but it was the product of millions of Americans who might never meet, all pushing in the same direction. Decades later, when veterans speak about the Sherman, the tone is not resentment, it is remembrance. They recall the flaw, not as an accusation, but as a truth that helps explain something larger. America's victory in World War II was not built on invincible machines, but on ordinary men who kept moving forward, even knowing that protection was never complete. As the war progressed, one reality became impossible to ignore. Pretending the Sherman had no limitations would not save lives. And the United States, unlike many nations involved in the conflict, possessed a decisive advantage: the ability to learn quickly. Reports from the front lines were studied, not dismissed. The experiences of tank crews were no longer just stories, but data that shaped real decisions. The response was not to abandon the Sherman, but to rethink how it was used. Tanks began operating more closely with infantry, artillery, and most importantly, air support. This reflected a distinctly American approach to modern warfare. Victory would not come from isolated duels, but from coordination. Where armor fell short, strategy filled the gap. Where steel failed, the system endured. Veterans remember how this shift changed everything. The danger never disappeared. War never allows that, but unnecessary losses were reduced. Knowing when to advance, when to wait, and when to pull back became just as important as firepower. The Sherman was no longer just a machine, it became a reliable component of something far larger, something that depended on collective discipline and shared awareness. Meanwhile, back home, American industry never slowed down. Factories worked around the clock, implementing gradual improvements whenever possible. Better guns, internal adjustments, incremental changes to protection. None of this turned the Sherman into an unstoppable weapon, but it sent a clear message to the men fighting overseas. They were not forgotten. The nation was still fighting for them. When the war finally ended, many of those men returned home, carrying memories that were difficult to explain. They did not talk in technical terms. They spoke of heat, of noise, of long moments of silence after combat. They spoke of friends who never made it back. In those memories, the Sherman was neither hero nor failure. It was simply part of the experience that shaped an entire generation. The lessons learned from the Sherman did not fade after the war. They became the foundation for future American armored doctrine. Tank design shifted toward protecting crews as much as defeating the enemy. Mobility, firepower, and survivability were no longer trade-offs. They were requirements. The human cost of the war had been paid too dearly to be ignored. For many veterans, witnessing that evolution brought mixed emotions. There was pride in knowing their experiences helped save lives in the future. But there was also the quiet understanding that these lessons arrived too late for some. Every improvement carried a memory. Every advancement was built on sacrifice. Over time, the Sherman earned a unique place in American memory. To some, it represents hardship. To others, resilience. To many, it stands as proof of America's ability to adapt under pressure and prevail through unity rather than perfection. An imperfect machine operated by extraordinary men, supported by a nation working toward a single purpose. Seen from today, the Sherman's flaw does not diminish its legacy, it deepens it. It reminds us that victory was never easy, never clean, and never free of cost. It was earned through the willingness to learn, adjust, and continue forward under immense pressure. That mindset, more than any layer of armor, was America's true strength. When veterans speak of the Sherman now, their voices are calm. They understand that history is not written by perfect machines, but by ordinary people making difficult decisions in extraordinary moments. The Sherman did not win the war on its own, but it was there, and for those who were inside it, that fact will never be forgotten.